That system deliberately let them down. And this system has continued to leave them out in the cold, while a few elite people like Ramaphosa himself have benefited tremendously from this rainbow oligopoly system.
BEE is here to stay. This is according to President Cyril Ramaphosa writing in his weekly newsletter. He takes issue with the controversy around preferential procurement policy, an aspect of which, pre-qualification criteria, was struck down by the Constitutional Court after a court application going all the way back to 2017 by the business advocacy group Sakeliga. They've joined us on the show many times before to discuss. But now I want to speak with Gabriel Crouse of the IRR about whether Mr. Ramaphosa is right in his interpretation of the Constitution and preferential procurement policy. Gabriel, welcome to the show.
Thanks, David. Yeah, so I think Ramaphosa is right to say the following thing. Section 217 of the Constitution covers procurement, when the government's buying stuff from ordinary people. 217.1 says the process must be fair and transparent and cost-effective and so on. And basically it says you must maximize value for money. So that's great. Section 217.2 says that doesn't prevent some kind of affirmative action policy, policy that categorizes preference, that protects or advances persons or categories of persons that are previously disadvantaged. Section 217.3 was amended quite a few years ago. And now it says that national legislation must be passed that must implement the policy referred to in 217.2. And this, I think, is where Ramaphosa starts going astray, because that word must comes into his letter. He says, not only must you, satisfy the cost effectiveness requirements, but you also must preference previously disadvantaged persons, meaning Black persons, women, and people with disabilities. So he's saying you have to do affirmative action no matter what. This is what the Constitution requires. Now, David, let me tell you very simply why he's wrong. The Minister of Finance is allowed to exempt people, organs of state, from affirmative action if it's in the national interest, in the public interest. And that could be for national security reasons, because you need to import stuff, or just more generally, because it's in the public interest. That power is granted by the Public Procurement Policy Framework Act, passed in the year 2000, and has been used over and again since 2000. We say not enough. We asked Gordon Guana to grant it to all organs of state earlier this year. He did grant it to Eskom, Transnet. We want those exemptions to continue to be granted wherever they've applied for. We're looking to review applications that have been denied. But the basic point is, if Ramaphosa were right, and you always had to do affirmative action, then Gordon Guana, Pravin Gordhan, Trevor Manuel, Des Van Rooyen, every minister you can think of, the long and the short of them, would have been acting unconstitutionally by saying, we need to buy something from Japan, and there's no ways to do that through a BE deal, so we're just going to buy it. Of course, it's not unconstitutional to just buy the thing from overseas. So of course it's okay, and has already been established to be okay, for organs of state to just maximize value for money and forget about race, because it's in the public interest. Now the question is, how does that connect back to this must term in section 217.3 of the Constitution, which seems to say you must implement affirmative action as envisaged in 217.2. Now, it's a little bit complicated, but there's two ways to understand the exemption power as being constitutionally legitimate. The one way is to say that you must be allowed to do everything considered in section 217.2. And 217.2 is a policy that keeps open the choice between value for money and affirmative action. So the Constitution is saying, hey, you get the choice as an organ of states. Go whichever way you want. And if you get that choice from the Constitution, no minister, no act of parliament, no ordinary bit of law is going to block you from doing that. The other way to read it is to say, no, look, the Constitution is saying that you've got to do all of the stuff in Section 217.1 and all of the stuff in Section 217.2 as well, all of the time. You always have to do affirmative action. This is what the president's saying. And you can say that that's consistent with the exemption power. Just make the following observation. One way to do affirmative action is simply to maximize value for money, is simply to serve the public interest. Why? Because there's a rational connection between the public interest and the interests of poor Black people. If you want to improve the lives of poor Black people, increase exports, pay down the sovereign debt, fight inflation. Both of those things fight inflation. Decrease unemployment, increase job opportunities. Both of those things fight poverty, which disproportionately affects Black people. Improve, your education bang for buck spend in public schools and universities. All of the just basic, obvious ways of serving the public interest is really going to help poor Black people that are still stuck in the shadows of apartheid, because that system deliberately let them down, and this system has continued to leave them out in the cold, while a few elite people like Ramaphosa himself have benefited tremendously from this rainbow oligopoly system. Most people have been left out by failing to serve the public interest. If you change the direction and you do serve the public interest, of course, you're helping alleviate the worst legacies of apartheid. So in that sense, it's a no-brainer. You maximize value for money, not in contrast to affirmative action, but as the most profound and effective way to achieve the legitimate goals of affirmative action.
All right, Gabriel. Well, we're recording on Tuesday, and this week you are going to be releasing a report on preferential procurement policy, authored by yourself and various others at the Institute. So what are you arguing there specifically? And you're basically saying to state entities that they can go ahead and pursue a meritocratic, non-racial approach to procurement and kind of work out the details later. Could you elaborate on that?
We're trying to do a couple of things there. First, we're showing that there's a window of opportunity to go full merit. That window was opened by now Chief Justice Raymond Zondo in part 1 of his report, where he said, look, there's this tension in Section 217 between maximizing value for money and going for a racial option. And he said, ultimately, the national interest is best served if you just say, maximize value for money first. Straight after that, Lindiwe Sisulu shot back and said, there are mentally colonized people in the judiciary, and she made all these terrible insults that we condemn. Another part of the window of opportunity is Andre de Ruyter, Eskom CEO, on this channel speaking to you, responding to a question about the IRR's drive to get exemptions from race law and to go merit in terms of procurement, saying that you need to get rid of non-value adding intermediaries in order to reduce costs, increase the speed of supply chain, and improve transparency. The same point as Zondo. This is not about punishing Black businesses. Black businesses are going to do better under a meritocratic system because it's going to be a more transparent system. It's going to have a larger and faster growing economy. And it's going to, avoid those situations such as in SAA, such as at Eskom under Brian Molefe, where Black businesses were punished by procurement systems used as an excuse in order to get other Black businesses that just happened to have one extra advantage, which is that they were willing to pay kickbacks. The corrupt system has benefited people of all races, companies from across the planet. We need to get rid of that. We need to get transparency. That's a very important reason to go meritocratic. So we're trying to talk about these reasons to take advantage of the tilt in public opinion, with people like Nyathi Mteto on the Eskom board coming out and speaking quite powerfully about the way to go. Organs of state need to now follow it. And I'm thinking about state-owned enterprises, but also about municipalities, especially those run by political opposition parties who've often talked about, going meritocratic, but now need to make it really obvious that that's what they're doing. Second thing we're trying to do is make sure that these organs of state know that if they are challenged legally, they're going to be safe. They're protected by the current wording of the Triple PFA. They're protected by the wording of the regulations, which say, go for your own specific goals, which could include durability, speed of delivery, ease of finance, basic maximizing of value for money issues. They could also have the IRR's long-standing economic empowerment for the disadvantaged goals in mind. In other words, give points to businesses that are improving exports, that are adding to their workforce, that are helping pay down the debt, that are developing innovative technologies, that are paying lots of taxes that are then being spent on, social services. Use a point system that's non-racial, but that really is going to help the economy grow and improve the lots of the poor. And the third thing we're trying to flag is that this window of opportunity is going to shut in your face if you don't take the chance now. Unfortunately, you've got Minister Nklesi coming from the other side, bringing more aggressive BEE, to use his phrase, going with a law which if he gets it, he wants to get it by the end of the year, is going to put 85% of the private workforce under his thumb for him to be able to impose Dischem-style race quotas there. So organs of state need to remember that South Africa has a history of really pushing against the government. In the 80s and early 90s, John Cain Berman, our late colleague at the IRR, wrote The South African Silent Revolution. And the key insight there was that apartheid was fundamentally dismantled by ordinary South Africans, first and foremost Black South Africans, flouting the laws of apartheid. Secondly, businesses that continued to grow and expand their non-racial ways of doing business in the face of apartheid regulations and laws, on the back of the thought that it's the right thing to do. So organs of state need to be doing that same kind of thing now, following the moral call. It's in their best interests in the long run to just act properly and non-racially, and to know that that's not a violation of the constitutional order that we're under. It's actually a validation and a vindication of that. And we've got the very clear legal opinion to demonstrate that fact.
Gabriel Crouse, thank you very much. Let's hand over to you, our audience. Do you think that state departments should be pushing for non-racial procurement? Leave your thoughts down in the comment section. My name is David Ansara. This is the CRA. Until next time, take care.